All right, so let's talk about this level of RBA. Who cares, who should care, and why? And this, I'm not going to give you the answers. You get to talk to us. It's a conversation. So at the population level, who should be paying attention at this population level within an organization or community? Um, who isn't and should be, and why should they be looking at this? So let's just open it up and have some conversation about this. I'm not opposed to calling on people.
I haven't talked yet, so I
Okay,
guess
thanks,
I
Emily.
will.
Thanks for being brave.
um, I think everyone in an organization should be paying attention to this because I feel like it's pretty easy to get caught up in the minutia of what you do every day. Uh, but I do think that someone should be responsible for making sure the process moves forward and sort of like thinking about it on a larger scale and making sure employees are thinking about it. And I would guess that that responsibility usually falls to some type of manager or person who is thinking about the larger picture of the organization. But I don't think that means that employees don't have the responsibility to be thinking about population level because they're the ones, you know, often implementing what the strategic plan or the answers to these questions are. They're like actually, but following through on those strategies.
So having everyone at least understand the connection to population level, especially at the program level. They may
Yeah.
not be fully involved in the whole strategic conversation, although ideally they would be.
Yeah.
But they certainly should know, again, why their programs exist and to what end it exists. And
Right. And I think it also creates a sense of buy-in among employees, like that they are responsible for the strategic plan too, and should care about the ultimate goal, you know. And I think if you have that buy-in and contribution from all employees, it kind of creates stronger ties to the organization and the ultimate mission.
Yep, I would agree. And I will just sort of do a cautionary tale. There are lots of folks who are just really dedicated to their program, right? And so it's sometimes interesting to try to pull them into that conversation. At that point, you can just say, that's fine. You don't have to be part of the conversation, but I need to always remind, we need to always remind ourselves about the why we exist. And that's okay. I mean, to each his own, depending on the culture and the time frame and the time availability. Again, a lot of my work has happened in health and human services. So when I think about, places with early education centers, your frontline teachers and infant care folks are generally just flat out taking care of those kids, and sure, they're probably thinking about the big picture every once in a while when they come up for air, but it's not essential that they're completely connected to it in light of taking care of those infants, right? And so there's sort of this, and sometimes you have employees who really do care and they want to understand the big picture. Great, include them. So there's sort of a decision-making process that goes into that based on time priorities. Who else would like to share their thoughts?
Well, I'll jump in. This is Beth.
Hi,
I
Beth.
think that people who have responsibility for and control over budgets and allocation of resources need to be involved. And sometimes that can be like a board. Sometimes it can be an executive director, but we need to be putting our resources towards what we really think is important.
I think that's a really good point. So again, the decision makers, the resource holders and distributors should certainly be paying attention to the overarching strategy and purpose, and taking a look at proving why you exist, what should be invested in, and what's working, right? And monitoring that change. So often it is the board and the executive director and CFOs who are taking a look at this big picture, but also not losing sight of the performance measures, right? So there's affirmation that these things work, that your programs work, and that it feeds into this big picture. And with more investment, it will even feed more into that top level, right? So that's a good point. Any other ideas about who should be paying attention to this population level? All right. The only one I would add is if you're working in partnership in the community, and many of you are, so with multiple stakeholders, multiple partners, and multiple strategies for multiple organizations, this is the place where collective impact or some form of that happens. If you're sitting at those community-wide meetings, this should be the focus of your conversation. Otherwise, you're just, you might be sharing information, but not at any shared purpose and alignment and movement along the way, right? So I think if you're sitting at those community tables, that's another place that this should matter.